Your identity is an art, and it is the most underrated, unaddressed art form, but also the most important and the most life-changing and beautiful one there is. And the thing is, what is it to be human? What is it to be alive? What is it to have a fulfilling life? It is to know yourself, to experience being yourself, your real self, and to live a life that makes sense to you, that feels like you are enjoying being yourself, that feels like you are expanding into the version of yourself that you personally, nobody else, most want to be. What else is there for a fulfilling life? There's a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, and it was written by a hospice care nurse who talked to many people who were on their deathbed. And the number one regret of all was that I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself and not a life that others expected of me. And that hit me so hard because when I read that, I had been trying so hard to live a life that was true to me, yet the way that I had been going about doing it was that I was looking around at everybody else and how they were doing it, saying, okay, I need to be more like that. I need to be more like them, because I thought in order to find the right life for myself, I have to see what everyone else is doing right and do it like them. That made logical sense to me. But now looking back, I realized that only took me to a place in which I was so lost from myself. I didn't know what I actually wanted, who I actually was. And nobody teaches us this. There is not any finding your own identity 101 in school. There is no doctor you can go to for your identity. And all I wanted as a teenager was to go to some kind of magical Miss Frizzle, wise woman character who was also like a counselor and who cared about me. Because when I went to the school counselor, they just sat me down and looked at my grades and said, you got to get better at math if you want to make it into college. And they didn't care about me. Ironically, I had to lose my own identity multiple times in order to find out that the way to find your own identity is to see it as an art that makes sense to you. Because art, to be an artist, isn't to just copy someone else's style and call yourself an original artist. It isn't just to be a cover band and emulate things that other people created and wrote. To be an artist is to eventually find your own sense of style, your own unique, original way of being, and expressing that to the world in whatever shape or form that you convey as yourself. And with identity, it is all-encompassing with ourselves. It is our personality. It's the way that we think. It's the way that we decide to present the way we look, the way that we keep our belongings, what we choose to be around in our lives, everything. And just like an artist, this is supposed to change and grow with us. If you've seen those books with the collectives, the collections of major artists from history, their first paintings do not look like their last paintings, or their first whatever it is doesn't look like their last. You see these great artists like pop musicians, rock stars, they go through a whole transformation and have different iterations of themselves. They don't just stay the same. And yet here we are thinking that right when we reach a certain age, we are supposed to be ourselves. And it's usually some really, really young age, like 18 or 21, some arbitrary age. Our brains aren't even fully formed physically until around 25 and older. So why is it that we think that we're automatically ourselves at this age that is just arbitrarily picked out of the sky, and no one has ever helped us to truly figure out who we are and to bring our true selves into fruition, our true identities into fruition? So here we are, all these humans walking around thinking that we know who we are, yet we're all secretly so lost. We are all miserable in some shape or form. We have existential crises. We're the most medicated blah, blah, blah in the history of whatever. And this is because identity isn't cherished. Our society says that we value the individual. We're like, be yourself, love yourself. We've heard all of this stuff, and Yet the way that we go about doing it in the world is not supported. The moment that you do something different, you get so many different opinions coming at you, whether it's online, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's your own self, because you've taught to judge yourself in that way and to measure yourself against others, whether it's a billboard or just someone you see online. There's so many different opinions coming at us at all times. Our identity is precious and it must be protected, it must be upheld, it must be nourished and grown and treated as this important thing that it so much is. And this is what we're missing. This is what we're all missing as humans, is the ability to grow into ourselves, to uphold ourselves, to become the unique versions of ourselves that we are, and do it in a way that defies the conformity and the norm. And so when I say that your identity is an art, it is because it is solely yours. And yes, all great artists, they have to learn by copying. So if you're like me and you've just given your identity away to relationships or someone else, or you've been following and copying, whether it's unconsciously or not, somebody else for most of your life, that is just you learning your own artistry. It is not something to look down on and say, man, I wasted my time. I lied to myself. I was doing it wrong. What's wrong with me? Of course you didn't know better. Nobody ever officially teaches us this. So that being said, now that you've learned the craft and like delved into these different parts of yourselves, because that's ultimately what it was, right? You were following the people that you thought were the right way, and you specifically chose those people for a reason. So there's more wisdom in that than you might think. But now, going forward, you get to think like an artist and say, all right, now if I'm going to be the artist and the art form, if I'm going to be the creator of who I am, and finally choose my own identity as my own creation, what do I want that to look like? What do I want that to actually be? This is just about seeing things in new ways and training your brain to actually step outside the lines, to look outside what was presented to you by all these other people who were trying to create you, right? They're trying to be the artists of you, but you're supposed to be the artist of you. You are the artist of you. You are your own major masterpiece, your own artwork. Sorry to be cheesy, but that's the way it is. This is the way I see it, and this has helped me so much. So just really start to relax into the idea that you are creative, you are being created, you create yourself, and your identity is your biggest creative work.